Hello and welcome. I'm Professor Lukas, and today we'll be talking about introductions in academic essays. This information is adapted from Chapter 1, Introduction to College Reading and Writing, in the textbook I wrote, College Composition and Reading, Information and Strategies. The overall expected structure of an essay is an important concept to be familiar with, especially when enrolled in college courses. This is part 1 of a series of videos on essay form, and the series covers all 3 parts of an academic essay: introduction, body paragraphs, and conclusion. Let's take a look at introductions. The first part of an academic essay is the introduction, which draws the reader in and gives them an idea of what the essay will be about. So then, these 2 aspects, drawing the reader in and connecting to the rest of the essay, are the main purposes of an introduction. If introductions give you trouble, you can review the suggestions for introductions on pages 10 and 11, such as beginning with your thesis or with a striking example. To draw the reader in, it often makes sense to start with an interesting or surprising fact, or to lead in by talking about something they already know about. For instance, a well-known fact or general statement about your topic. The point of the introduction is to lead people into your paper, so it should tie directly to the essay's contents, mentioning the main points or arguments the essay will be focused on. As most of you know, the thesis statement should also be included in your introduction. In order to give the thesis emphasis, it should be either placed first or last in the introduction. If it's first, you should connect back to it at the end of the introduction, so your reader leaves the intro focused on the argument you're trying to make. Thesis statements will be discussed further in a future chapter, but for now, I'll add that a thesis statement consists of 2 parts: the topic or subject and the argument you're making about it. If you have trouble with thesis statements, one helpful strategy can be to include the word should in your thesis statement, since that clearly indicates there's an argument. You're stating how people should act or think about some topic or subject. However, I think one of the most useful tips for producing well-written introductions is to wait and write them last. Many people start by writing the introduction simply due to the fact that it's the first part of the essay. But if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense to wait. After all, it's a lot easier to connect to your body paragraphs if you've already written them, and thus know what they're going to say. Particularly since you often don't fully realize what you want to say or how you want to say it until you've completed your first draft. As the textbook chapter notes, there are some things to stay away from when writing an introduction, such as making an announcement or talking about yourself in the wrong way. Let's take a look at a poor introductory paragraph and talk about what problems it has, after which we'll review a strong introduction based on the same essay. Take a moment to read this introduction and think about what you see wrong with it. What are its problems or weaknesses? One primary issue with the introduction is its lack of clarity. While it was very clear what the argument was, that school uniforms should be required, the actual introduction was very unclear about how that was going to be supported. Some authors are named, but there's little indication of what points will be made to support the thesis. This might be okay if instead there was some compelling information or an example, but a list of names of authors and websites does nothing to prepare the audience for your argument or get them inclined to agree with you. Remember to tie directly and strongly to the essay body and to stay focused. Another problem is the fact that the thesis is buried within the introduction, rather than having the additional emphasis it would receive from being placed at either the beginning or the end. In addition, if the thesis is not at the end, then the last sentence should remind readers of the thesis, and thus of the point of the paper. In this case, ending with specific information can make the reader think that the paper is primarily about attendance and graduation rates, rather than just being one argument among several, all of which support the overall point about uniforms. One final issue with this example is the tone. An essay written for an academic environment should not talk about yourself unless it's relevant, like if you're using your own experiences as an example. Telling the story of your research is not an acceptable substitute for presenting that research, however. In addition, questions should be avoided as being too informal. Anytime you weaken something by placing I think in front of it, you should eliminate that phrase. Instead of, I think we should require school uniforms, say, we should require school uniforms. In the case of this essay, instead of, I think so, the author should have revised the whole statement, perhaps saying, it is clear that, instead of making the paper sound like personal opinion by using I think. Now that we've seen a problematic introduction, let's take a look at one you might actually want to model your own introductions after. Obviously, this is an example of a stronger introductory paragraph for an essay with the same thesis and sources. Take a moment to read the introduction and think about what features you see that contribute to making it more effective. One of the things that this introduction does correctly is that it begins with the thesis statement and then comes back to it at the end, making sure that readers are left with a strong sense of the point of all the arguments being made. They know what everything is supposed to connect to, and thus are in a better position to make sense of, and be persuaded by, your argument. Another aspect that accounts for the strength of this example is that it includes the general arguments that the paper will cover. This isn't required, since there are different ways of capturing the reader's attention and readying them for the essay body, but it's one of the easiest effective ways to begin an essay, and it's a great structure to fall back on if you haven't gotten any brilliant inspiration for the introductory paragraph. That wraps up Part 1, Introductions, of our mini lecture on essay form. Be sure to check out Part 2, where you'll learn an easy formula for writing fully developed body paragraphs without counting sentences. Thank you for watching this video. I hope this overview was helpful and illuminating. Please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions you may have about the material. I'm always happy to help.